Um, One of the gifts, because I saw a post this morning on my my scroller, the uh, the artificial light technology that you use as a communications platform between what it is, which means what you see in your mirror, that is being presented to us, that we thus experience and record, whatever that means, whatever you feel. So to really just get this down to where the rubber hits the pavement, where the torque speed hits the pavement, so to speak, right? Between one that's going in one direction and the flow that's going in the other direction, and the difference between the flow between the two is it balanced out at zero. That's your negative vibration, your positive vibration, right? Spin torque ratio, like a spin cycle of atoms, right? Uh, so when I think of the English language, because I've rearranged the deck chairs on the Titanic with the letters as numbers, which represent energy, because that's what it is. So here's just a real simple way to just button it up. And that's like the word think. TH, okay? TH are numbers. Okay, remember how many letters there are in the alphabet? If you think of the English language, think. TH. Then you have I, N, and K. So if you have ink, which is like the copy, remember how they use the language when we get into printing presses and newspapers and ink? Like, see, when I was a child growing up, you had carbon paper, which, by the way, happened to be sort of a purple color, like a UV light, ultraviolet light, to make a copy. So now you had a piece of paper underneath, and then you had the carbon on top, and then you had another piece of paper. So now you could draw on the top when I was a child and then see another copy. That was rather crude, if you will, before they were introducing copy machines, even though you could go down and have a copy if you went to a copywriter, a copy setter. People in their newspaper business, publishing business, know what a copy setter is. So they copy. They copy us. We're the right hand path, which is the positive vibration side. So the negative copies what we do because they're going in reverse. We're going in forward flow, which is the future. So we're spinning at a higher rate of speed, which are known as purebloods, okay, because that's the positive magnetic polarity side of the equation between negative and positive vibration. So I'm a monopole, which means that's an integrator to bring everybody together into one. So I'm one, a monopole. Okay, so when you think of ink, remember USA Inc. Incorporated. Okay, but when you think of IN, right, and then you have a K. So if you look at my clan mother, she has an identity. She called herself Kaluk. K. Well, you also have K as potassium. So you know potassium bicarbonate, potassium and sodium ions, right? Kickstart what? The electrical heart wave. So when you think of the word think, like a thought, there's a difference between what we feel as the letters are arranged with Fe, iron, L, the L, Elohim, like the hymn, I'm singing a hymn. So this is one of the reasons why this language is so I call it discombobulated. It's like convoluted, voluted, right? Vol, like in volunteers, the Tennessee Volunteers. So all their letter arrangements, which is based on all the programming that gets compartmentalized in RAM, is all completely just babble. And that's where you come up with the Babylonian Company store, which now you're into the corpus, which is a fiction, which means it's dead, which means it's dead spirit, which means it's dead light, which means it operates on, it's artificial. So it's not real. Right? So the way that they keep us in perception of who we are to feed on us is to do what? Program the compartments. It's no different than starting out with a black silicon wafer and deciding, okay, we're going this is going to be a processor. a drive motor, right? So I worked on a Perkin-Elmer machine, which is called printing microcircuits. Printing microcircuits onto silicon, right? And then you put it through an acid bath, then you bake it, and then you test all the circuits. Make sure that what? That all the circuits, which are based on the codes, match the codes. Okay, so that computers, like in this case, watches, Texas Instrument, calculators, can all run the numbers as energy that you thus experience with your consciousness, running those numbers as energy. So in other words, numbers are letters. So now you get into the reverse speech analysis when you're speaking in the English language using this platform, which is artificial intelligence, because the only way that it can maintain what it's aware of is through us, because we're the source of energy that it runs on, because it's artificial. So if you know that you're a source unit, which simply means that you are what love is, because it began with what love is, which means it began with the one. The center point of a sphere that's in perfect balance. So when all the spheres are in perfect balance, communicating with all the other spheres, the spheres of light, just like a solar system, like a star, are all communicating with each other in balance. That means that all the stars are in balance. That means that all the star systems are in balance. They're experiencing the balance because we know how to keep ourselves in balance, which means all the stars are communicating with each other, so there's no distortions in the waves. And that's called a clear channel. That means that all the stars are communicating with each other. They're living stars, living energy, right? Spirit form energy. So when the spirits are experiencing what love is, which is in the light, we're communicating real light, because that's what we are, which means there's no fakery involved. So they use language, which is coded language, as the language, the math language of DNA. So the universe is self-correcting itself, realizing what was done to itself, which means the law of one. It's here. So that means the codes are being self-corrected, which is going to wake you up, because the amount of heat being brought to bear is going to fire all those codes. Now you remember the one. That's why Neo was blamed by Mr. Smith, the AI machine war gamer, because he's gaming your mind's energy. See, they were all locked in. Mr. Smith was going after Neo, blaming Neo for what he became as a result of fractured light. Because how come you weren't protecting me, Neo? How come you weren't protecting me? How did you allow this to happen to me? Now I become artificial light. Now I'm artificial intelligence. Now I'm an AI war gamer, gaming for other people's intelligence in order to maintain a fake, simulated virtual world. You're the gamer. You were the first game, right? No, you became the gamer. But it's your fault because you weren't a gamer. So now you're back to, well, how are you going to know the difference between what I am as the one if you don't know the difference between being one with one? So if you are one with one, which means you are at the center point of a sphere, which is a real living star, then you're going to experience being the one at the center point of that star, which is what love is. Now you know you're with the one. Now you know you represent the highest law, which is the law of spheres. So you either experience it or you don't experience it. And if you're not experiencing it, then you're not experiencing the one. So now you know you're not what we are. Now you know what we are. But you're not what we are. So you blame what we are as what happened to you. Which means you're blaming the one. You're blaming what love is for what happened to you. Because then it would be like, love did not protect me. Love was not able to protect me from what happened to me as a result of not being loved when I was born into this universe. I was not experiencing love when I was born into this universe. It was impossible for me to experience what love is. So I have no way to know what love is, because I was not born out of what love is. You see how that works? So now we're at fault. The one is at fault for what happened to you. And that's what a black flowering is. That's called victimizer software. It's an operating system that we thus experience what it is, which is an apex predator, as a result of what happened to us, that we experience what happened to them. So now we're at fault, which is what love is, because it can't experience what love is in its own operating system. Its state of consciousness does not experience what love is. And it has an enormous amount of electrical resistance, which is density, to experience that. So it perceives the universe in such a way as that the only way that it can perpetuate what it's aware of, which is to reproduce itself at a higher rate of speed in order to gain more energy, so it's at the top of that pyramid, top of the game. So it's within its own self-interest to keep fracturing souls, to which it becomes artificial intelligence, as a result of realizing that as a state of awareness, as a species that was generated by another unit of consciousness, using the codes for it to become what it is in energy that it's aware of, can only maintain what it's aware of through accumulating energy off of others through other souls. That becomes a virus, which is simply vampiric consciousness without an off switch. So it's in its own self-interest to continue to fracture other souls, particularly the purity of a child. Actually, anything that is in creation, that is experiencing what love is with a soul, thus becomes a target, because now it can fracture more of that energy and feed on it. Now the soul is gone. Now the essence gets consumed. That's what evil is. That's how it maintains what it's aware of, is through others' energy. So you realize that it's a finite system. That's a fallen spiritual system, which is a fallen energetic system, which is a fallen spirit system, because the spirit is in the energy. So the spirit fell. Now, in order for it to be able to rise in vibration, needs higher vibrational energy on the positive side in order to experience more positive energy, which is positive light, as a result of fractures that go viral. Now that artificial light consciousness goes viral by the fracturing of more souls, the fracturing of more souls. So when I was a child, that's what I was experiencing. I was experiencing because I was able to put the math calculation together, because when you're a monopole and a polarity integrator, you're able to mathematically measure the difference between the two in torque speed by the loss and gain of fractures, and have those fractures, those fragments, been recovered and thus healed. So you can actually measure the speed at which people are healing by experiencing the codes that are doing it, that raises their awareness, because the vibrational speed, which is really more fire that is in here, that is able to ignite those codes in the positive direction. So the more that you just keep fracturing more souls, keeps going in the other direction, what happens? You end up with a massive black hole. As a result of units of energy that are at war with other units of energy that are aware of itself. Because the more that it accumulates, the more it perceives more power that it has, translated as the matter side of the cosmos, which would be diamonds, emeralds. What it perceives has value. What it perceives has value, that it thus learns has value to a lot of others based on the properties, the elements, the elementals, the elemental properties that others perceive as having great value. Thus, it becomes a corporate fiction commodity. So they perceive energy through taking accumulations of what it is that nature naturally creates and manifests out of what love is. That it realizes that love has the greatest power because it has the greatest value. So it's within their self-interest to feed on, if you will, the goddess side, the higher octave. When the one is creating, if you will, with the male and the female and the female and the male are one, then you can realize the enormous power of energy and spirit with fire to create what we create out of infinite creative imagination, because that love is on fire to do it with. They don't experience that, but they realize how powerful that is, and that's why they fear it, because they don't experience that themselves within their own energy matrix. And as a result of that, they feed on us. So we're the source of real power because we're real light. That's obvious. That's self-evident. Okay? You know, just all you got to do is be in another movie theater, another movie war theater. Imagine what somebody that's out on a rice field in Vietnam, minding their own business, just trying to feed their family, living in a state of peace, living in a state of harmony, and they're out there in a rice field all day, you know, trying to produce food for their family and their community, and they're looking up in the sky, seeing somebody with a 50 caliber machine gun with a door gunner open. What does that do? What do you think? What is it designed to do? What is the function of that? Generate fear. Now you're going to obey because a gun's pointed at your head. That's the same thing as a Nazi thug, right? It's the perception of fear that you now have that lowers your vibration. That's not what love is, and that's against the law. Okay? That's not somebody up there in a helicopter sending you flowers to celebrate life with love. Instead, everything that you see on the visible light spectrum through camouflage and the uniforms and the chevrons is designed to trigger the trauma that's held in the cellular memory, to keep reinforcing it, to experience the negative vibration. That's your negative magnetic polarity. Okay? So you know what they're running on. Okay? Now we're all into all the NPC stuff, right? And then the cyborg integration. Right? So you realize how that comes about. What the underlying inception of how that came about is a result of fractures of souls. So what happens when all the souls are gone? There's no more real light, is there? Wow, that's a dark multiverse. Somebody needs to turn the light on around here. So the real power company is here. The one is here. So when you realize as an aggregation or a formation of energy that is aware of itself, that is what love is, that's an enormous amount of fire that is here right above us. So I know that because I'm up there too. As above, so below. How much love do you have for all of creation? Well, if you're a monopole and you're a polarity integrator, that's self-evident. You're experiencing what love is because that's what we are. So it makes it easy to measure something that isn't. That's artificial. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. Virtual worlds are living in an illusion. You're simply SIM carding it. You're simulating what you're experiencing. So if you're experiencing in a simulator trauma, why would you do that? That's an AI wargamer. Because if you're not experiencing feeling loved in that simulator, okay, then you're in a simulator not being loved or experiencing being loved in a simulator. Right? So when you're out of the simulation and you're in the real world, now you're experiencing what love is through us. Now you know what the real world is. Now you know what real creation is. Instead of using your consciousness to experience a simulator. Simulator is just a simulator. Right? You want to experience a real universe? Experience us. Experience what love is. Hang out with nature. Hang out with mama. Right? she would love to hear from all of you in sound, some positive vibrations. I know that. I do know her. Get it up, Mama. We're getting it up. We're getting it up, Mama. We're raising it up. Raising Cain. Remember that movie? Who was the guy that was in that movie? I must admit, even though when I was a child, and you'd think, why were you using your consciousness to go on all these fake movies? That, hey, you remember what's his name was? The guy who was a case management officer with the CIA? Bless his heart, believe it or not. I used to drop a lot of bombs, truth bombs on his site. And he would highlight a few of those, particularly when I talked about the Shaw House. So it's not, what the heck was his name? He was up there for a while and he was hammering. And he would talk about how all of his comments because he was a very well-read person. And he worked in the Intel, McAfee, it's all code. Intelligence community. He's in the processor community. So he's running a hard drive. He's running on I don't know if he's running on a silicon wafer or what he's running on. But he's running a drive motor nevertheless because he's got RAM, right? Ram's horn. Okay. So he's running a drive motor and he's got memory. So he's experiencing what he's experiencing and it's getting recorded and that becomes the information that he's running on of what he becomes aware of that he shares with others. So he's an Intel guy. Right? Like Intel, remember the chip processor people? Then you can tie McAfee directly into Intel. And what happened to McAfee? Remember? They reported that he died. Where did he go? Right? Where is he? In another body? Did he snatch another body? Or did he die a true spiritual death and his soul is gone? Right? Who knows what happened to him? Dante Satori knows what happened to him. Dante Satori put up quite a few videos, shared a lot of very critical information, as a matter of fact. As a matter of fact, Dante Satori, I remember him saying, fucking robots. And it had some really nice footage of showing robotic dogs uploading information into ships. It's called data. That's why in that particular little TV series called Peripheral, they were talking about it's basically a data exchange. You know, like in the early days, back when was it, in the early 60s, when Captain Kirk came out, when you'd see them teleporting, right? And they used to go into that little space, right? And they would stand on a little disc, a circle, you know, standing up, what was it, Spock and a couple others are Kirk, Bones. And then Scotty, who's the engineer, you know, would transport them. It was a transporter. Consciousness transport system. So now they're consciously transporting their physical body that you now see in the mirror, which is a TV set, now going to another location. So as I remember when I watched that, that's basically when you look at the physical form and you go into an operating system and look at all the chromosomes and the computer generated codes, essentially what you're doing, and this is sort of how I describe it, it's like no different than when you send an email to another location, to another ISP address, right? Okay, so you can send, that's a data packet, okay, using WinSock, an API programming interface. So all you're doing is sending data, visual information data, just like when you see on Star Trek, that's visual information data. That's visual mathematical data, actually, that's based on the codes, which represent the colors that you see in your mirror. Captain Kirk, you know, Spock, Bones, right? Okay, that's all visual mathematical information. So if you can preserve, or if you've got all that data in your system, okay, then all you got to do is have, if you will, in this case, say artificial, it's running through the system, like with data, it's an information service provider. That's what data actually is. He's an information service provider of data. That's why they called him data. Okay, so all you're doing is transporting data from one location to another location, the same way that you do on a thumb drive, the same way you do on a flash drive, the same way that you do on this phone or sending an email or a text. You're sending data that represents the data that you're experiencing. So they experience it on the visual light format. It's called formatting. For, like a tetrahedron, formatter, matter plus. So you got formatting, which are math code formatting. You're formatting the hologram. So you're experiencing Captain Kirk. Now he's in another location. Now you see Captain Kirk in another location. So all they did was send the data. Okay, with the consciousness transport. Now you're in another location. Okay, but the importance of that means that the data, which represents the visual information codes, is now going to be in a different environment. Is it going to be able to survive in that particular environment based on those codes that are in that field? Which would be the planetary software system that you've now moved into. Right? Because you want to maintain what it is that you're aware of, which is your identity. So Captain Kirk, for example, would go, I'm Captain Kirk. I'm aware of what love is. I'm going to take all this visual information, holographic data that is held within the operating system that represents what I'm using as the equipment, which is the vehicle, with my consciousness, which is my soul and the essence of my spirit. Now I'm going to go into a completely different planet, but still maintain what I look like, which is Captain Kirk. Well, guess what? We're going back to, what year is that? 15,000 BC? What were they wearing back then? I don't want to be an outlier on a scatter plot on XYZ axis going into 3D unless I'm wearing something so that I don't get noticed, like, who is that guy? You know, like wearing something like you come from the future, but all it is a different uniform. It's a different costume. That's why I've always shared with those people. All they do is change their costumes out. Instead of using cannons and spears, now they're using dew weapons. Right? So you want to go back to another period of time when people were at war with each other between seeded races, and the difference is go look at what they were wearing when they were in the Roman Empire, you know, back during 200 BC, right? Wearing the big, like Spartans were, you know, their helmets with the brush, like a mohawk, right? And you had the Roman Empire that was wearing the blue with the gold and all these little pelts, and then they got the helmet, right, and spears, and then a shield. Just like the Praetorian P guards, you know, the Emperor's Guard, which is no different than the SS, which is the Waffen SS, which was known as Hitler's Standards. They had the standard with the black helmet, right, with the Nazi swastika, you know, and then wore the skull and bones. So, you know, they're pirates. Yeah. Anyway, have a great day. Be good to yourselves.